Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is the regular council meeting for the town of Bay-Westfield for September 27, 2021, called to order at 7 o'clock p.m. Acknowledgement of treaty land. We respectfully acknowledge that Bay-Westfield exists on the traditional Woolstock Way land. The lands of Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by our town is known as Woolstock, along which live Woolstock Way, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. We, the staff and elected representatives, pay respect to the elders, past and present, and descendants of this land. Record of attendance. Let the record reflect that we have full attendance here tonight. Item 5, agenda approval. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield approve the agenda of September 27, 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Thank you, Councillor Balcom. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Item 6, disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there any? There being none, we'll move on to item 7, public hearings, presentations, delegations, petitions. 7A, regional facilities committee representatives. The first one up is TV station, Katie Bacon. Katie, welcome. Thank you for coming to join us here tonight.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. It's been a while since I've been in an in-person meeting. So good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Katie Bacon. I've been the town of Bay-Westfield representative on the Harbor Station Commission for several years now. So tonight I'm here to provide you with the facility operational and fiscal highlights for the last 18 months, really. It's been a while since I've been here. So like all other arenas, the last 18 months has been really challenging, really for everybody, not just arenas, but the Western and Ontario hockey leagues did not play at all. We were very fortunate to have the Sea Dogs play 19 home games in the facility. So during those games, there was an average of 800 people at the game. So we were very fortunate to at least have something there. We've also hosted the Midway and Show and Shine car show and a high school graduation. In the fall of this year, the Sea Dogs are hopeful that we'll have the building at full capacity as long as they can sell the tickets. So that's really good. We also have a number of trade shows booked, so I'll get into that in a couple minutes. Unfortunately, due to border restrictions, there'll be no concerts until at least spring of 2022. So in 2020, with almost a shortfall of almost $1 million in revenue due to COVID, our deficit only increased by 6%, and that's $49,000. And then so far this year, with a shortfall of $260,000 in revenue, we're pleased to say that we're only $1,700 behind budget. That's really due to cuts and layoffs, I guess. Expenditures are all frozen, and all the expenditures are down. So we were able to make up quite a bit of that loss in revenue. So over the previous 18 months, like I said, a number of staff were laid off. In addition, we're pleased to advise that in 24 years, with partnership of QP, labor harmony continues. There's not been any grievances filed in all those years. So now on to stuff that's coming up. Just in very recent news, the Sea Dogs were awarded the Memorial Cup. I'm sure most of you, all of you know. So that's really great. So that's going to be in June of 2022. I'll get into what that kind of means for the building in a couple minutes here. So in addition to that coming up, we're also hopeful in hosting an RV show, cheerleading, a Final 12 basketball, the 2022 St. John Home Show, Campbell Amusements Midway, Dance Quest, and Rhoda's Christmas Craft Show, Remembrance Day, and hopefully a number of concerts next year, as long as we can get some acts into the building. So for the Memorial Cup, The Sea Dogs are predicting $1 million a day in economic spin-off, and that's for the greater St. John area. And that's predicting that they'll sell out all 9 games. So what that means for the building, we had to do a number of things to prepare for this bid. The city, through its capital fund and the federal government, has installed LED lighting throughout the arena. This has already been done. Replaced all the heat pumps and installed a state-of-the-art new dasher board system, so all new boards. And coming up in preparation before June, the Sea Dogs, along with the city, are going to make over all 5 dressing rooms for that tournament. From a financial standpoint, it's also great for the Harbor Station Commission and TV station, because we'll be charging rent, box office fees, and hydro and staffing. So we'll recoup all those costs in that Memorial Cup. That's what I have for an update, and we're hoping for a lot better times ahead than we've had in the last 18 months. And on behalf of the Harbor Station Commission and TV station, we wanted to thank you for your ongoing support.
Thank you, Katie. It's having the 2022 Memorial Cup coming to the region is really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to highlight that it's an excellent example of the power of regional collaboration and regional support. I know all the regional mayors signed a letter in support of the bid, and having Envision St. John push the bid forward too was it's like I said, an excellent example of how the region comes together.
Right. Yeah.
Get things done. So.
And we were also up against some pretty awesome competitors too in Quebec, and it's really great that St. John's been awarded that. Yeah.
Council have any questions for Ms. Dakin? Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield accept this information as presented. May I have a motion, please? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. May I have a second? Thank you, Stephanie. Councilor McIntosh, I'll get it on. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Now up next we have Michelle Floro from the Imperial Theatre. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I would normally not just read this report, but it's been crazy 18 months since I was last here, so I didn't want to miss anything. So I'm going to read this, and I can send you a copy of this for your review at a later date. So I was already on the Imperial Theatre Board, and you lost your representative. So a few years ago, the Imperial came to you guys and said, we have somebody from Grand Bay on our board. Is it okay if she represents you? And you said yes. So that's how I came to be here. So the highlights of the year from the Imperial. At the beginning of season 27, which was fiscal 2021, the world was still coming to grips with what the long-term effects of the pandemic would bring. With the announcement of the continuation of the federal wage subsidy and with other COVID relief grants becoming available or secured, the immediate fear of closure or layoffs began to subside. This allowed the staff to begin to plan for the upcoming year and what could be accomplished during this unusual time. Point of interest, the Imperial Theatre kept their full staff on through the entire pandemic, and everybody was working. They were swapping out so that they had a limited number of staff in the building at any given time. But they were very happy to be able to, and we as a board were very happy that they would be able to keep all of the talent that we already had on staff and in management. And they accomplished a lot. The theater was in use for 129 days, compared to the previous last full season when the theater was in use for 179 days. So being dark for 50 days is quite an accomplishment. Staying connected to the community was essential. The song of the day continued through the summer until the theater reopened. This small gesture had a huge impact within the community. Radio stations began to cover it, and TV invested in it as a sponsor. The Incubator Project began as an artist support program, providing a safe space for artists to rehearse and create new work when finances and space confines prevented them from using their usual studio spaces. The response was incredible, with 28 artists and groups using the theatre from mid-June to September. Funding continued to pour in for this program, allowing the scope to be expanded to include a capital infrastructure project that resulted in $328,000 of funding being secured toward the purchase and installation of a streaming system, a new DC projector, which now will allow us to show TIFF films in the upcoming TIFF Festival next year, and the freight elevator retrofit and update. With the Atlantic bubble open and artists traveling among the 4 provinces, the theatre was able to book a small but mighty season in the fall. On September the 11th, 2020, Rose Cousins became the first artist to perform for a live audience on Imperial stage since March 12th, 2020. Followed by Ben Kaplan, the Divorcees, and Aaron Costello, along with shows featuring some of the incubator artists. Rentals were scarce, even with reduced rates, but Symphony New Brunswick was able to return, and for the first time, Imperial was able to host the Empty Stocking Fund Telethon, actually enabling that event to happen. The rest of the year was full of ups and downs, moving through different levels of lockdown as case numbers went up. By Christmas, the video equipment was installed and allowed for the first streamed event to take place, Mike Bigger's Songs of the Season. It was followed up by Imperial's At Home for the Holidays, featuring many of the artists that would have normally performed at the theatre in December. The downtime during the winter months allowed for more advocacy work to be done in conjunction with other theatres and colleagues in the arts sector. The main focus was to petition government for more support and recovery funding for artists and arts organizations as talk of the reopening process began. During this time, and with the Atlantic bubble closed again, staff focused on local art and projects to continue training with the new equipment and opening the theatre back up to incubator projects and streamed concerts. Partnerships began to form with organizations such as the Quality Block Party and TIFF, creating future presentation and collaboration opportunities. The work and unique projects that the Imperial created during the last year garnered international attention within presenting networks, and the executive director, Angela Campbell, was asked to sit on numerous panels and invited as a guest speaker to many town halls to discuss the incubator project, safety protocols, and the ways the Imperial was staying connected to its patrons. St. John Theatre Company returned to the stage after an 18-month break in May with Nonsense. It was the first hybrid theatre show that had audience attendance both in person and via live streaming, and it was a big success. By June 1st, 2021, once reopen plans had been laid out, the theatre had successfully either cancelled or rescheduled all of the shows from March 2020 to June 2021 to this year's upcoming season, which of course now will require further tweaking. Other noteworthy moments: that the Imperial was featured in Theatre Design and Technology magazine after an inspector was so impressed with our fly rail system and maintenance. So that's all of, well, something similar to this, but it's the way the lights and everything are moved up above the stage. Excuse me. The theatre was also featured during the Junos this year. Maestro Fresh West, who has relocated to the city, was a special performing guest. The Imperial recorded its first virtual tour. Huddle featured Imperial in an article about our leadership role in the community by being one of the first organizations in the area to do land acknowledgements and create space for Indigenous artists during reconciliation. The theatre also hosted the Best of St. John Music Awards for the first time, and finally in June, we were able to use the marquee to congratulate high school grads. Overall, the year was small in comparison to others, but extremely impactful. The organization expanded its networks and took another step forward on the national stage as a leader in our industry. Angela has again been invited to participate in the Canadian Association for the Performing Arts International Cultural Trade Cohort. The technical crew was able to expand their knowledge and skill set moving into the world of video and live streaming. And many of the staff also invested time in numerous professional development opportunities that were available throughout the year. The year was difficult, but the organization and the staff weathered the storm, coming out stronger and more knowledgeable and ready to tackle season 28. And we couldn't have done it without the help from the municipalities in Grand Bay, Rossay, Quispamsis, the Facility Commission are big supporters of the Imperial, and we thank you for that support.
Thank you, Michelle. The Imperial is a jewel in our region, and my 2020 grad was one of the first to have his name on the marquee, so I was very appreciative of that. But you know, the innovation, the creativity, and just the general passion that we see coming out of how the Imperial rode the pandemic is quite something. So thank you.
They're an impressive crew.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, but a comment, your season that just got released is very, very exciting.
It is, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I already have my tickets.
That's all thanks to Angela. She's amazing.
Well, so if you don't have any other questions or comments for Ms. Claro, thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield accept this information as presented. So that's Councillor Bailman, seconded by Councillor Malcolm. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Item 7B, Lot 4, Robin Court, presentation by Joe Oliver. Mr. Oliver, oh, there you are. You can see behind Councillor McIntyre.
So I have a little,
Actually, John, I'm going to get you to stand up to the podium, and just if you could just state your name and your address for the record, please.
yes. Jeez.
And what's the time limit on the presentation?
10.
10 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do I need to wear my mask?
Yes, I think so, right?
Yes?
Yeah, because you're.
Okay, no issue at all. So Mayor Merrifield and Council, thank you for allowing me to appear. My name is Joe Oliver. I live at 10117 Route 102 here in the town. I've lived here in the town all of my life. I understand each of you may have had an opportunity to read my submission and my letter to Council, proposed solutions. The purpose of being here tonight relates specifically to a building permit request for Lot 4, Robin Court, owned by my sister Catherine. According to town staff, access to her lot is the only issue outstanding and identified, holding up her building permit. We don't believe any access issues exist ourselves that couldn't be corrected with a few loads of gravel. Please understand, all others have signed off on this certified building lot and the development of the lot, including the Department of Health for well and septic. The environment have no issues, regardless of the neighbors' complaints. Gemtech have engineered the pad to ensure all is done and in keeping with standards, engineering standards. And just to add a little bit about the Gemtech process, they're on site. They provide an engineer when you hire them during each lift of gravel that is added to the site. They do compaction tests and a series of ground trimmers to ensure that everything is compacted and done appropriately. It's also important to identify Catherine has gone through a great deal of effort and expense to ensure her home will be on a solid footing. Her plan is to retire there, here in the town where we grew up. So I'm simply here requesting fairness and asking for you to take another look at this request for a building permit, for you to please consider all of the options. Attached is a copy of the survey document of Robin Court. It was certified back in December 1971. You would have that with my submission. Also attached is a 2020 New Brunswick Department of Transport municipal asset report that identifies Robin Court as 125 meters in length. This is equal to 410 feet. 410 feet puts the end of Robin Court near the bottom corner of Catherine's lot near the marsh, as depicted in the survey plan. So all is as it should be. I recognize the lower portion of Robin Court was always gravel, but as a resident, we considered it developed. We used Robin Court for years every summer while canoeing on the Narrapus River. There were never any access issues from our perspective. Parking near the river, sometimes many evenings each week throughout the summer. In the fall, duck hunters used to back their vehicles down and put their boats in the river in the marsh back then. Robin Court, from our perspective, was always accessible. Now, currently, town staff are saying the street is undeveloped. One thing is for sure, Robin Court was developed enough for us to park there, also for the village of Westfield to erect no parking signs as they did years ago. The signs were there for years. The town of Grand Bay-Westfield later removed them after amalgamation occurred, as the signs were not supported by municipal bylaws, according to the previous mayor. Although only my opinion, the poor condition at the lower end of Robin Court currently more relates to the lack of annual maintenance since amalgamation. I think it may be helpful for you to also know the Robin Court survey stakes are all still in place after all these years. There is no issue with where the street is or their boundaries. Like many other streets in the town over the years, many streets were gravel, but residents were always granted building permits. As an example, Brandy Point Road, Shannon Road, all the side streets off of Bayview Road, the entire lower portion of Pandenack and Epworth Park, all these streets were gravel. In fact, the top of Highland Road is still gravel. Douglas Street is still gravel. Some were not even ditched back then, but all had homes, therefore building permits. The upper portion of McLean Road, Mallard Drive, I think the upper portion of Mallard Drive was just paved 2 years ago during a town project, because the rock from that project came to our site. Highland Road, when I was a kid, probably two kilometers was gravel, but had homes, therefore building permits. The Calvin family lived near the end of the road back then, and I believe some still live there today on the gravel portion. So I'm here requesting fairness for Catherine and to support her request for a building permit. Please remember, we are only talking about 15 to 23 meters of gravel road to access her current driveway. The gravel trucks who constructed Catherine's engineered pad had no trouble accessing her lot. Again, please be mindful, we're only talking about 15 to 23 meters, where Catherine could easily extend her driveway for access. I believe as mayor and council, you have the ability and the authority to correct this situation. I would also like to point out, if you decide to approve this building permit, it affects no other resident on the street, as Catherine is the lowest resident on the street and also owns the green space across the bottom in 2 separate PID numbers. I would like to see my sister Catherine treated fairly, as there are a number of other examples in the town where others have been granted building permits under much more ambiguous circumstances. The property at 11 Station Road as an example. That home has its driveway on a 21-foot pedestrian right-of-way to the river. There are homes on the Shannon Road that were built on deeded right-of-ways to the river. Catherine is in a certified building lot, in a certified subdivision. So when you compare these situations, I truly believe our town representative could have easily approved Catherine's request for a building permit. I believe this is our best opportunity to take another look at this. I also believe planning should be solution-based, transparent, not problem-based. I would also like to leave you with this thought. I believe when a developer, like William Melcher, turns property over to the municipality to be used as a street, as has occurred in this situation in 1971, there is an inherent responsibility of the town or any municipality to provide annual maintenance. In this situation, annual maintenance only occurred until amalgamation. I believe it should be renewed. In closing, the mowing of the right-of-way was believed to be a good deed. I thought I was doing a good deed by identifying the property stakes of the roadway, and they would be more visible for anyone who went to look. I will leave it there and ask you to consider my request for Catherine's building permit. And I would do my best to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Does any councilors have any questions, Mr. Oliver?
What are these stop work orders over the years that started this project? Any more stop orders from the town?
None that we're aware of.
And I have a couple questions. Do we plow the road right to the end? We already paid for the distance you mentioned, or we're paid to the end of the
I would refer that to CAO.
I'm going to have to ask the works commissioner, but we paid to the end.
Well,
To the asphalt.
certain lengths, right? And we get paid to plow the road.
So the asphalt is 77 years. The Ministry of Highways pays for 125 years. But I'll have to ask the works commissioner to speak more about that. There's an inaccuracy there.
Yes, but with that is we pay the contractor to plow the asphalt surface. The part beyond that, we refer to it as being undeveloped. The contractor does not plow it, does not plow that. And then DTI, or Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, their plans or document that Joe brought in, their plan has it going all the way to the end. But that's a number that DTI uses. So it's not.
So we're not paid to the end, like the cul-de-sac on his map. There's a cul-de-sac on the very end.
I do not believe so, but I can go check and confirm that.
So that number has never been changed. Westfield used to end on the south side of 102, and Robin Court is on the north side. And so it has not been a part of the municipality until recently, well, relatively speaking. So that is a number that DTI has used for years, which is the length of the right of way, not the right end of the developed road.
And our question was a building permit, a fire permit, so he didn't really need a fire permit then, was that right?
Sorry, what permit?
A fire permit or a water permit, and so he didn't need one, it's not in this report.
No, I submitted in our documentation to the town, I submitted a letter from Howard Pelkey that we were out of the 30-meter buffer. The pad is out of the 30-meter buffer, that's clear.
Yeah, so what the letter said to Mr. Oliver was, provided that the portion of land is outside the 30-meter regulated buffer, you are exempt. But the condition here is provided that, that it's demonstrated that it's outside. So he doesn't, Mr. Oliver suggested that, things are okay, but that's only if that it's outside.
And if it helps to clear that up, Environment have been there many times based on the neighbors' communication. They've never had an issue with the development of the pad. They ran the buffer line at the base of the slope beyond the pad. So they have no issue with where the pad is placed. They have no issue with the development of the pad and where it's placed, if that adds any clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Councilor Bell?
It doesn't matter for us that he had a height, that's not concerned, like you're going to create by elevation, and he's going to go by elevation.
And John, to answer that, the pad is already higher than the neighbor uphill. And the neighbor uphill has never flooded. He didn't flood in 2018 or 19. And actually, the level of the pad, the 2018, 2019 for us was a blessing. Because it identified the new standard. So after 2018, 2019, we added to the pad for security. No one wants to be flooded. Yep.
John, did you have something?
No, I just wanted to bring to Mr. Oliver's attention. Back in March, council approved that the new flood level is for new building permits 7.4 meters.
Yes.
And so that's the level that the council is referring to.
Yes.
So the pad is about 7.4 meters.
Yes.
Question,
And anybody else have any questions for Mr. Oliver? No? Okay. What we'll do now, Mr. Oliver, is we'll refer this to staff for further information and then decision at the next regular council meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you allowing me to appear.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you again.
All right, so we're on to 7C, zoning bylaw number 122, amendment. We don't have to
Just receive it to be used at the next meeting. Receive and file the other two.
Okay.
Just, it gives Mr. and Mrs. Oliver, brother and sister, assurance that council has taken into consideration the presentation.
Right.
And that's not being forgotten. That's why I would prefer that council have a motion to receive and file to be used during the meeting of October, October 12th, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Can I have a motion?
Certainly.
Thank you.
I will move that we accept the information as presented and refer it back to staff.
Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Item 7C, zoning bylaw number 122 amendment, presented by Jennifer Brown from Dillon Consulting. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Very happy to be here. All set?
We are all set, yes.
Great. I'm not sure who I'm looking at when it comes to the slideshow, but I'll give you a little flag when I want to advance. I'll just say, really happy to see some familiar faces, really happy to see some new faces around the horseshoe. So thank you again for having me. I will advance to the next slide. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, but I'll give you a bit of context for those new faces here and update for the more experienced faces. We'll go through each amendment pretty quickly, just to kind of give you a chance to absorb where this is coming from and some additional context. And I'll give you a really quick overview of the legislative process. Okay, so in 2020, you had a very busy year. You adopted a new municipal plan. Your municipal plan was really an effort to kind of modernize the development process and to set the stage for some new things and new processes for development. So in September of 2020, you adopted, council adopted here we go, getting ahead of myself. Council adopted a new and modernized zoning bylaw. So our big focus with the new zoning bylaw was to make things a little bit easier for developers coming through the door. We received the message from staff and from the community that, you know, Bay-Westfield is open for business. We want to entice people to come in. You put a lot of time and effort into becoming a developer-friendly community, and we really wanted the zoning bylaw to support that. So what you're seeing tonight is essentially an update. Advance the slide a little bit. So kind of the updates fall into two kind of buckets. So one is really your housekeeping style amendments. Not uncommon to see especially after a year of staff and the community using the bylaw to see, you know, if there's little pain points that we need to iron out. That's what we're seeing through these housekeeping amendments. And the big set of amendments around the flood overlay zone. So the reason it wasn't included in your zoning bylaw update is because we were waiting for your climate change adaptation plan to be formed and approved. That was done earlier this year. Your CEO referenced that in the presentation before me. It was adopted in April of 2021. So we're taking the information gathered through that process and creating applicable and implementable, I should say, guidelines for development in certain areas that fall into the 1 in 100 year floodplain. Next slide. So in total, we're looking at 16 amendments. It sounds like a large number, but a lot of these are kind of parceled together. They, again, housekeeping amendments and improved approach. They vary in complexity. Some are very simple, just wording changes to kind of promote clarity. And some are a little bit more complex around the flooding piece, but we have this kind of information and study to back those big changes. And you know, to give you kind of a highlight of where these are coming from. So some of them are coming from past council who had discussions through the zoning bylaw process, past PAC, for example, discussions through that process. Most of them, though, are being brought forth by staff. So staff is observing what's happening with the development process and bringing them forward. Staff is specifically your development officer, David. He is looking at this every single day. He's catching the mistakes that the public and us as consultants didn't catch the first time, and he's bringing those forward. He's also here at your council meetings and our PAC meetings to realize and to kind of look at, you know, what issues we're seeing and bring them forward so we can correct them now. Again, the big thing with your zoning bylaw and to kind of, I guess, to calm the nerves around these changes happening within the year is that, you know, the housekeeping amendments are okay. You want to have a constant review every 1 to 2 years because your zoning bylaw is supposed to be adaptive and nimble to what the community wants. So if you're seeing the same applications come through and run into roadblocks, we want to know about it so we can adapt how you're implementing your zoning bylaw to be accurate and to accurately reflect what people want. So again, really going back to your community that's open for business and trying to grow. We don't want the zoning bylaw or planning process to appear or be perceived as holding any of that up. And so that's why I'm here tonight, is to make sure things can move forward quickly. Okay, so your first and second amendment are around development permit fees. It is really helpful to have these integrated into your zoning bylaw because it has something you have something to hang your hat on. It's pretty simple. We just we had an original language in the past bylaw pointing to a schedule of fees. You don't have a schedule of fees in your current bylaw, so we wanted to remove that and update to include a $50 fee. Very straightforward. The third amendment is a definition of habitable space. So this is really to facilitate that flood overlay zone. We talk about, and we'll get to it, and you talked briefly about it in the last presentation. We're really cognizant of where people are living, lowering the risk to the town, increasing public safety around future development. So we've set a minimum elevation, but with that minimum elevation talks about minimum elevation of habitable space. So if you have a concrete pad, it's got to be over a certain minimum elevation in order for people to safely live there. Next, we have 4 and 5. This is a bit of a tricky one. So, Your Worship, you'll remember this from being on PAC. Change to portable or temporary garage definition and standards. So in the original legislative process with the zoning bylaw, we had defined temporary and portable garages as having a timeline. Can you advance one slide? So originally the timeline did include between October and April, the end of October, end of April, for these temporary garages to be permitted. And just so everybody knows, we're talking about the tarped garage over a plastic frame. So the original definition that was put forward through the legislative process included this time frame. It was requested at the PAC level through public consultation and consultation with PAC that timeline be taken out to allow temporary garages to be permitted all year round. It was brought forward after the legislative process. Oh, sorry.
Jennifer, I just want to interject here just as a moment. I think when I was on PAC, and Councillor Day was on there as well, we had this conversation about the dates. And the intention of PAC was not to have like an open-ended 12-month of the year garage. It was to remove specific dates. So there's no, particularly when you look at the recreational uses of, you know, four-wheelers, quads, etc. The feeling of the PAC members was that there could be a specific date range, but did it have to be only in the winter?
Right.
So I know the concerns are probably about the, you know, the tarps getting ratty if they're up, you know,
Yes.
12 months of the year consistently. But so what PAC actually wanted was just to have specific dates removed. So if somebody wanted to put it up for 6 months in summer, they could. So that, I think that was a bit of a miscommunication. Yes.
So going in line with what I understand to be the intent of the PEC at the time, can we amend this amendment so that maybe permit any residential lot for 6 months or less or something to that
Absolutely.
effect? Because that's what I understood through the mayor, and I think that better captures that, you know, if someone wants to do restoration work on the vehicle in the summer, they have a sheltered space to do it or whatever. David,
that was a concern that people had, that they were not able to use the settlements.
So, through you, your worship, to the CAO, we absolutely can change that. I think regardless of how we word it, there needs to be some recognition that this is going to continue to be an enforcement issue. And I think that, you know, that's where the language that PAC was searching for, I think that was some of the challenge around that conversation, was simply how do we address it, but also allow people to use it. We can change this. Again, the motion this evening is to request that this be referred to PAC and set the public hearing date. We can present PAC with the updated option without having to pull this amendment out of the package. So just keep that in mind.
no, I was just going to respond. I agree with you, it's an enforcement issue. We have a lot of enforcement issues. And I have been developing a bit of an inventory on this. We will be addressing that at some point. However, council does have the prerogative to make the legislation, and we will enforce it as we're able to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, in saying that, the intention here is to ensure that I, as your consultant, set you up for the greatest success. So if the 6 month window is satisfactory, we can go with that, and we'll present it to PAC and the public for their feedback. So the public has, speaking right to the camera, the public has 2 more chances essentially to provide feedback on this. I think it's an issue that a lot of people talked to us about when we were doing engagement in that first process, because it is something that a lot of people are interested in using, and there was some uncertainty on how to kind of proceed. So we'll work through that. They've got lots of time to provide feedback. So if everyone's comfortable, we'll move to the next.
Thank you.
The next set. Oh, no problem. So the next set of amendments deal with self-storage. So in conversation with your development officer, it was quite clear that there needed to be 2 approaches to self-storage. So you have this, self-storage is in high demand everywhere because it's an easy thing to, like a stopgap measure for developers who are acquiring specifically former commercial buildings. So it's an easy thing for people to kind of transition into while they wait out what they're going to do with land or existing buildings. So in consultation with the development officer, it was quite clear that we needed a commercial classification, one that is more compatible with surrounding development of different scales, and then a more industrial focused industrial focused self-storage use. So very similar in definition, but difference in application. So if you can move to the next slide. What we essentially looked at is in your central commercial zone, which is along River Valley Drive, this commercial self-storage being permissible, compatible with the development that's happening there now, and the established development pattern. And then in your highway commercial zone, and commercial, yeah, so we're looking at so where you have the ability to allow more intensive land use, we wanted to allow that industrial style self-storage. When I talk about industrial style, you're really looking at the units that they're trucking in and putting on kind of a bare spot of land. We're not talking about massive development here, we're just talking about something that the format's already established, but it may not be most compatible, you know, in your kind of core area where you're trying to boost up this mixed use and commercial style development. But there are locations throughout the town that this would be more compatible. The next set of changes are around supportive housing. This was to clarify discrepancies between descriptions and definitions and descriptions in the actual general standards. There was a number permitted in the definition that wasn't then further supported in the standards. Again, in consultation to your development officer who brought this forward, you get a lot of inquiries about supportive housing. And so we want to be really sensitive to it and very permissive while still, you know, allowing for that industry to evolve because it is rapidly evolving. Regulations coming down from the province are changing. There's a bit more flexibility allowed, so we want to be able to be responsive to that. Next slide there. So in saying that, it is still most likely and most practically applied as a conditional use because depending on the number of residents, you're going to have different intensities. Different intensities mean different impacts to surrounding properties. So we do still want to filter it through PAC. And then in terms of the mixed use zone, what you're seeing along River Valley Drive in particular is a mixed use zone, probably your most recognizable one. Putting that in the permitted use category, because there are some buildings there that are ready to be transitioned from maybe single family homes into a different use. This is a very common request that you're going to get from these proprietors saying, I bought this house, I want to turn it into supportive housing. We're saying River Valley Drive is the perfect area for it. And it's got great transportation access, which is, you know, going to be the biggest question that your planning advisory committee is asked. Next, okay, again, goes back a little bit to the minimum floor elevation. So we're adding this to, the habitable space definition. We're adding minimum floor elevation to your general standards. So for those who haven't had a real close look at the zoning bylaw, you essentially have a section of your bylaw where you have standards that apply to every development. So every time David, your development officer, gets an application, that's a section that he rolls through for every single development. That's your, that's kind of your first big check mark. So in saying that, this is where we get that 7.4 meters. I will go into the 7.4 meter kind of definition and explanation in the flood overlay zone. So home occupation, this is just a simple point of clarity. So home occupation shall be subject to the following requirements was updated to just say where permitted so that if there is any question from a legal perspective, we can ensure that they're not getting there's no hiccups with technical language here. Very, very simple update. We also just wanted to provide some clarity on this second one unit dwelling. So in the process we did with the municipal plan and the zoning bylaw, we had a lot of inquiries around second units in a particular zone, specifically your rural resource zone with existing single family homes. Because the lots are so large, there was a lot of requests coming in or a lot of discussion around putting another primary building on that same lot because the lots are so large. This is only applied in a particular area. This is in response to very pointed questions, but we updated that second one unit dwelling to include the requirement of frontage on Generis Road, which further kind of secures the town's position around developing on a publicly owned road, requiring frontage onto a publicly owned road. So this is just in direct response and to those requests that were coming in and to provide additional clarity if you run into an application. Okay, so here's where we get into kind of the fun big updates. So, when we talk about the flood overlay zone, the intention here is really around sustainable development in its purest form. We want to make sure that new development that's coming into town is safe. It's safe for not only the residents, but it's safe for the general public. And, frankly, doesn't put the town at any additional risk. So you as council and your staff and the folks that live in your town, you're stewards of the land. And so, the intent here is to make sure that you can continue to be stewards of the land in the best way possible, using the best information possible to us today. So what we're talking about here with the flood overlay zone is quite literally a sandwiching of regulations on top of areas that are prone to flooding. So this only really comes into play, and I should say, this is not about squashing development. This is about making sure that development is carried forward in a way that's respectful and safe, respectful to the environmental conditions, and safe for all involved. Next slide. So what we're doing here is applying to, and there's some visuals in the next couple slides, but we're applying to this to all properties that were within a 7.4 meter elevation. So in your climate change adaptation plan, what you've adopted is actually 6.4 meters as identified as your 1 in 100 year floodplain. What we've done in terms of the 7.4 meters is calculate 1 in 100 year floodplain in terms of the elevation, and we've had to add an additional meter to ensure safety. So if you were to set the minimum elevation at 6.4 meters, which is the level we know the water's coming up to, if we set that at that elevation, someone builds a house, you have a flood next year, you can almost guarantee they're going to be flooded at 6.4 meters. We add the 1 meter for that additional safety. So the 1 meter is kind of there's a spectrum of kind of, in terms of best practice, where you should kind of hit that sweet spot of elevation. We've not gone to the max. The max is 1.75 meters above. We think 1 meter because, you are going to have wave run up. You are going to have, the effects of kind of peak tide, things like that. You're inland a bit that we don't need to worry too much to push you up to 1.75. We think 1 meter is very safe, and it's also achievable. So you're looking at 1 meter above, so 7.4 meters being achievable in terms of development pressure. It's not as much as a deterrent as if you added that additional 1.75 meters. So essentially what we're saying is you have your zoning map, we overlay it with your flood zone, and anything that hits that underneath that flood zone becomes a conditional use. So it applies to primary structures. We're not looking at temporary uses here, we're not looking at accessory buildings, we're looking at really, when you see the visuals, we're really looking at residential properties being the most kind of susceptible here. And we've excuse me, included the overlay zone as its own schedule so people can see it as its own purposeful thing. We understand this is a contentious issue. It's always a contentious issue when you're looking at kind of applying regulation to people's private property, which is exactly what a zoning bylaw does. But we think that what we've developed here is reasonable because you've created a fail-safe and you've got to go to PAC if you hit this flood zone. PAC can look at what we've created as kind of the minimum standard, and then if there's extraneous issues here, so if there's issues around access, if there's issues around infrastructure, they can look at that case by case rather than it all going through your development officer. It gives the public also a chance to comment. So it increases your transparency around process, and it protects you a little bit more from these issues around appeals, because you've got a process that you're going through in every application that hits in this specific area. So it's increasing a little bit of safety. and due diligence on council's end. Go to the next slide. So these are just some quick, this should be in your package as well. But I just took some quick snapshots to kind of give you an idea of what this would look like. So again, we're not talking about buildings that are already there. We obviously can't require them to be lifted. We're talking about new development here. This also doesn't apply to, like I said, temporary uses or accessory buildings. Accessory buildings are going to be a bit of an issue when we look at applying this because, and we heard this through the engagement process, accessory buildings take on a life of their own in this community because people want extra things to happen in their accessory buildings. Again, this is a case-by-case issue. You know, I think the big thing here is ensuring that you have a transparency of process so that people are given this information up front. And so what happens when they come in to get a permit for your accessory building, they get to see if they fall within this zone, and then they can make choices that are appropriate for them at that time. So those are the amendments. I'll give you kind of a quick snapshot of the process, and then of course I'm available to answer questions. But like I mentioned this evening, we're looking to move this package forward to the Planning Advisory Committee and also set the public hearing date. The PAC, again, public meeting. Public has a chance to go through these amendments and respond to them, provide any commentary they feel necessary. They're also able to provide that same commentary at the public hearing. Should everything go well, public hearing will be followed by first and second reading. At a separate meeting, you'll do your third reading. So you are permitted by the legislation to make changes to this, to any bylaw, a bylaw amendment, I should say. You're permitted to do so right up until third reading. I will caution against making kind of changes on the fly in that first and second reading bit. I think, you know, it'll be very obvious to you as you go through the public hearing, as you read the package of comments, if there's necessary changes through these amendments. We can work through those together at the meeting. Also, I fully know that your development officer will come well prepared for that meeting. But changes that happen between your first and second reading and then your third reading, we need to make sure that those are very clear and they're not brand new information. So we really want to make sure we get this right. So if you do have any comments after this meeting, please forward them through your CAO and through your development officer to make sure that we can bring that extra information forward to PAC and then be fully prepared when we come back here and I see you again at the public hearing. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. I just want to make a comment about the elevation, the 7.4 being that 1 meter above the 6.41 100-year floodplain. You know, having seen the difference between 2018 and 2019, 2018 we had the floods, the wind was blowing in the opposite direction. 2019 was an entirely different story, and you saw the power of those waves and what that extra meter could have done for people. So I think that's more than prudent. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will just note that we did account for when we're calculating that 7.4, we did account for historic wind pattern as well as wave pattern. So it does kind of all get considered, and direction was a big thing in boosting up that 1 meter.
Yeah, that's like, you know, it was the year we got the wind, it was a big factor for a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments for Jennifer on the amendments? Okay, thank you, Jennifer. That I'm sure we'll see you.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. I appreciate it.
So the motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield accept the information as presented. Thank you, Councillor Day. I have a second. Thank you, Councillor Balcom. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? The motion is carried. Item 8, minutes of previous meeting. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of September 13th, 2021 as presented. I have a motion. I have a second. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Toole. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Item Item 10, bylaws. 10A, zoning bylaw number 122, amendments. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield establish October 25th, 2021 at 7 o'clock p.m. as the date for a public hearing of objections under section 111(1)(bii) of the Community Planning Act for consideration of draft bylaw number 122A, amendment to the zoning bylaw number 122, to be held in the Grand Bay Room in the Central Building located at 609 River Valley Drive. The draft bylaw number 122A may be inspected between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, inclusive accepted. Written objections to the proposed bylaw amendments may be made to Town Council in care of the CAO John Enswind by Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. Persons wishing to speak for or against written objections may be made at the public hearing to be held on October 25th, 2021, and that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield request written recommendations from the Planning Advisory Committee on the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. May I have a motion, please? Councillor Day, may I have a second? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence, any questions on the motion? Yes.
Your Worship, we have a history of going for legal advice after the fact. So I would like to have this, especially the flood overlay, go to legal and for any comments or concerns.
Thank you. I'm fairly sure that we've already done that with, but I'm going to refer that to the CAO.
Sorry, Danny, can you speak to that, please?
It's not that we have a letter or anything, but that through appeals, the effect of the appeal decisions came from legal to say that having it in the bylaw is our most effective tool forward.
And so having the flood overlay plan is the most effective tool.
So have they reviewed what we're going to be voting on?
I can send it to.
Yes, please. Yes.
Can you repeat that, please?
Thank you. Do you have any other, Councillor
Another
Bauer?
question for the CAO to your worship. Just want to make sure that the proposed amendments will be also posted on our website. The person doesn't have to physically come in here between the hours of 8 and 5.
Yes.
So it will be in a significant place.
Yeah, no, they will be posted on the website.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Billings?
How recent are these overlap maps? How recent are these maps, maybe like for that?
They were made as part of the climate adaptation plan in the spring.
How old are they? What date were taken and?
No, they were made for that plan.
Yes.
So they're less than a year old or a year old, something like that.
Yeah, that was.
And it takes data going up to 2020, I believe.
Thank you. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
I just have a question going back to the portable or temporary garage. Is the rationale behind the time limit, is it for visual purposes or because they get ratty and?
That's exactly what it is, so
Maybe about 12 months.
yeah, they're not meant to be permanent structures, that's why there's a time limit on there. The issue was that there was no real rationale for it only to be the winter, because people might want to use them in the summer as well. So,
It's also a public health issue, you know, that you can have somewhat live around the area and pile stuff up. So it's a combination of both aesthetic and public health.
Because I was just thinking some people may want them in the summer to do work or something,
yes,
but some people want them in the winter to store their four-wheelers or.
exactly, that's why we want to take the October 30th to April 30th bit off and just put like a 6-month period, so if they want to do it from, from May to whenever they have the freedom to do so.
So your worship, on that further, if I can ask our development officer, if I want to put one of those structures up, do I need a permit?
The way it reads now is you would apply to have one.
Yes.
So where it would be located from your property lines,
Right.
and that would be on record allowing to do that. And
So moving forward, if it's just going to be 6 months or less, they would still have to come in and get a permit.
I haven't seen that a permit is the way to go yet, that following the same process that we've had, it would be a letter to put it up.
Okay, because then if we have those on file, then you know if something's going beyond 6 months. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Any further questions or comments on the motion?
Just
Deputy Mayor Toole?
I just think this was really important, it's a long read, and I was really pleased that Councilor Donaldson had a comment that it should be online, because I think it's important for citizens to read this and take a look. This is a document meant to promote our town, meant to promote development. It's not meant to be a stop for anyone. So anybody who has concerns or any issues, really the time is now to look at it and ask, because this is meant to be something to promote safe, effective development in our town. So I think it's a really important. I learned a lot from the presentation that we had tonight that I didn't know before. Because a lot of these decisions were made by previous council, and they were good ones based on the climate change adaptation plan. So it's a tough one. Sometimes it's a scary thing to look at, something that we think is impacting our homes. But I think the rationale behind it is good, and I really encourage everybody to read it and really understand it. And I think that would be a good discussion around it at the AAC.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. I think it's important too to emphasize the fact that we're actively looking at these bylaws and how they're affecting our residents and development in real time and adjusting as we need to, so that we're more effective in what did Jennifer call us, stewards of the land. So, if there are no further questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Motion is carried. Item 11 is new business recommendations. 11A is Greater St. John Regional Facilities Commission 2022 budget. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the Greater St. John Regional Facilities Commission 2022 budget. I have a motion.
Sorry, can we have that?
Yes.
I don't have it, can't find it. It should be more along the line, sorry, that they approve the budget. It's then, we can release the funds.
Okay. So the motion should be that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the Greater St. John Regional Facilities Commission 2022 budget. Is that the correct wording? To release?
Yeah, we'll go with that. Sorry?
Contribution.
Yeah.
Approve the budget. So,
We approve the budget, we approve the contribution.
okay, all right.
It's one thing.
Okay. All right, so make sure we get the right wording on record. I have a motion, please. Deputy Mayor Toole, second. Councilor McIntosh Lawrence. Have any questions or comments on the motion? Deputy Mayor Toole, do you have any questions or comments on the
The Greater Westfield representative on the Regional Facilities Commission, and just to let you know that the Regional Facilities Commission has approved this budget and recommending it to all councils and municipalities. Has gone through its motion.
Thank you for your work on the commission, Deputy Mayor Toole. Any other questions or comments on the budget? All in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried. Item 11B, Scotia Bay Commitment Letter. The motion before you is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve signatures on the attached document to procure a line of credit in the amount of $257,293 for the General Operating Fund and a line of credit in the amount of $255,475 for the Sewerage Operating Fund and a demand loan in the amount of $297,778 and that Phil's Canada Fund debenture for the loan and process, that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the town to borrow by way of a Scotiabank Visa business card.
Your worship, can we turn that into different resolutions, please? There are two distinct ones. The first one, both of them are standard operating. just about line of credit. The second one is about the Scotiabank Visa card, which was approved via the new procurement policy. I think it was June that council approved it. We're finally getting documents.
Oh, okay. So all the demand loans, we'll do that on one resolution, and we'll do the Visa card on the other?
That's right.
Okay. So, we'll just separate that out. So we'll end the first motion with demand loan in the amount of $778 for the Bill Canada Fund to enter the loan process. Okay, we're good with that. We have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. We have a second. Thank you, Councillor Bailman. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Okay, the motion is carried. We'll go into part 2, so maybe 11BI, that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the town to borrow by way of Scotiabank Visa business card. And thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor Toole. We have a second. Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. 11C, speed study, McLean Road and Beverly Hills Drive. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield direct the Works Commissioner to remove the old children's lane sign at the west end of McLean Road. I have a motion, please. May I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Day.
Your worship,
Yes.
during our meeting today, we would like to amend this motion. Sorry.
So we're doing very motion
To remove all old children playing signs in town.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason being is that they're not enforceable. They create false sense of security. And we have one at McLean Road. The Works Commission did a bit of a tour today
Right.
and realized that there's a bunch of other ones that need to come down. Who's going to do them as the signs wore out? There's some signs who've been up for 20 plus years, he said, and obviously the children have grown up by now.
Okay.
And so they're really dated. However, we would like to keep the ones in place around playgrounds and places. Those should remain. The ones that are more like warnings aren't enforceable. They should really be removed.
Okay. So I'll restate the motion and then open it to questions. So the new motion is the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield direct the Works Commissioner to remove all the old children playing signs in the town with the exception of the ones around playgrounds and play areas.
Just all the old children playing signs.
I think you said you're doing the ones around playgrounds.
Those are some of the playing signs.
Okay, all right. So just remove all the old children playing signs in the town. Do you have a motion?
I'm okay with the amendment.
Okay, so that's fine. So we have any questions for, on the motion?
Just a couple more. We just want to came out of initially a speed study, seem to be having quite a few of these coming out. I don't know if there's, are these a regular occurrence? Is there something to do with the RCMP to ask that everything as part of the reports as to if there's any particular areas of speeding? Because the thing with these speed studies, they seem to show that once the radar is up, speed isn't a factor. So it's just kind of it's an interesting, I guess, pattern coming in, and whether we can ask the RCMP to assist us or if there's anything. Yes.
Yeah, John?
No, good observation. And sometimes speeds, relative, when you're walking in a cut of grass and you see someone driving by, they seem to be going faster than what you think. Now, out of both of those speed study reports, we only made one recommendation to council to remove the signs because there really isn't any other action that can be taken. The evidence that's been presented to us is that speeds have an acceptable level. And there were complaints by one individual on each street. It wasn't a neighborhood issue that came to us to identify it. But going forward, I do want to develop something resembling a policy about what we're going to do with the speed requests Because I think, we spent about $2,500, $3,000 on 3 ski studies in the last year. And, especially when the one's neighborhood issue, the other one, there's a limited neighborhood that uses that area. Anyway, so we'll do this, but as you can tell from this, we only came up with the one recommendation for council out of this.
Right.
So is there a way to have staff take a look at the policy to you are looking at that now?
Yeah, we will come up with something. I'm not sure what it is right now, and I don't anticipate we'll see a whole lot of stuff between now and spring.
No, I just want to make sure we're looking at all these questions, we're looking at it the same way for each community, we have a targeted way of dealing with it, so it's.
I think we can use it as a way to do that. So, do we have any other questions on the motion before us? No? All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. 11D, council expense policy. That the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approves the council expense policy. May I have a motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Day. Have a second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. And have John speak a little bit to the policy, but the point of having a delineated policy is for transparency and accountability. So it's important for us to do this because, we're stewards of the town's funds and the town's funds belong to everybody, so that's important.
Excuse me, so thank you, Your Worship. This is fairly straightforward in hindsight. She just called it council and administration expense policy. That's something that can be done if you want. But it's fairly straightforward. Previously, we had some of these items in different areas. They weren't in one consolidated policy. And so hopefully it's fairly straightforward. I did make edit. Let me see if I can dig it up here. It was around, sorry, give me a second here. And, excuse me, and what it is under expense statements, that paragraph, all expenses shall, members of council requesting reimbursement for business expenses shall complete and sign the required expense form as provided by town staff, period. So what I've done here is remove the period, put in a semicolon. Each councillor must claim their own expenses. And so really what's happening here, instead of one council pulling up the credit card for the mayor and saying, I'll pay for everybody, that's not very transparent. And really what it should be is if there's 4 members of council going at it together by themselves at FCM as an example, or Union B, then it should be each person paying for their own. However, I'd just like to bring to council's attention that when we went to the provincial conference for municipalities in Saskatchewan, I often had a town credit card and I covered it that way. So for Union B and I'm there as well, I would be covering that through the town's credit card. And of course, no alcohol is covered in any of these expenses. So the only difference here is instead of one member of council paying for everybody's and not be very transparent. That's what we're hoping that we could cover off everybody here. The other big thing that I'd like to bring into council's attention is that before council set their remuneration for mileage, and I believe it was for meals as well. And now what we're doing is we're referencing the GME policy. And of course, we know that 1950 doesn't always buy meals. So, if you're a Unit B and you go out for a meal with another town, and it's more than 1950, then you bring your receipts. Okay? And I think those are some of the big ticket items here. I think, a point of difference with some municipalities here, when you look under conferences, what sometimes happens is many of these conferences will have, especially FCM, Your Worship, they'll have study sessions ahead of the conference and after the conference. And so what we've done here is allow people who go to FCM to take advantage of these study sessions because they can be amazing learning opportunities. And instead of them coming out of your own pocket, they'll be paid for the town because, you know, they provide a significant benefit to the town. Not all municipalities allow that, but there are many that do. The other thing, for transparency, is most cell phone plans you can get with unlimited stuff is around $75. What we're saying is we'll pay, you know, your cell phone, your worship, reimburse you $75 a month for the use of that device. And then, of course, you know, councilors need the mayor and other councilors to sign off, or if it's the mayor, preferably the deputy mayor and council to sign off on expenses. And I would encourage council to not be like me and do them after you collect them. I'm embarrassed to your worship, I hadn't realized in a couple of months since I submitted mine. But just encourage council, if you incur an expense, please send it in. And even though it doesn't state it here, please send it to me and I'll forward it on to the county.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments on the motion? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? The motion is carried. 11E is the UMNB 2021 AGM resolutions. The motion is that the council of the town of Bay-Westfield receive and file the UMNB 2021 AGM resolutions. May I have a motion? Thank you, Councilor Donovan. Second. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole.
So we wish I didn't get a chance to look at these. I just realized that the UMNB meeting is next week.
Yes.
The council should make decisions on how they want to vote on these tonight, so don't receive and file.
Okay.
There should be some type of decision on what I want to do with each of these.
Okay. All right. So, you all have your resolutions in front of you. The first one is U2101. That's RCMP costs and the movers of town of Bay-Westfield.
I would suggest we support that.
The best way to structure this for a vote.
I think, you know, look at them quickly, you know, I would just say, does council object to anything?
Okay.
And then pull that resolution out. And otherwise, if you say, if everybody agrees that we support all these resolutions, then receive and file.
Okay.
However, if there's something that's objected, pull it out and receive and file the rest. Receive and file means that you accept them the way they are.
So, does anybody have any objections or does not want to support any of these resolutions that have been put forward for the AGM? No? Then I would suggest that means that we agree to support all of the resolutions. I'll list them out. U2101, RCMP costs, a mover to the town of Bay-Westfield. U2102, Municipal Insurance Program, also mover was the town of Bay-Westfield. U2103, Medical Clinics, mover town of Riverview. U2104, Subject Service New Brunswick, mover town of Riverview. U2105, Subject Ban Recyclable and Compostable Materials at Landfills, mover town of Sackville. U2106, Permanent Resident Voting Rights, mover town of Sackville. U2107, Subject Indigenous Languages on Ballots, mover town of Sackville. Subject Municipal Climate Change Funding, U2108, Subject Municipal Climate Change Funding, mover town of Sackville. Okay, so the resolution is that the council of the town of Bay-Westfield receive and support.
Not just support.
To support town of Bay-Westfield support the listed UMNB 2021 AGM resolutions. So are my original movers and seconders okay with that amendment? Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Okay. Item F, Remembrance Day road closure. that the Council of Grand Bay-Westfield, of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield, approve the request for a road closure of Woolstock Drive between River Valley Drive and Highland Road between the hours of 10 a.m. and noon for Remembrance Day services, following provincial COVID-19 protocols requiring 2 meters distancing between groups in outdoor informal gatherings with confirmation, approvals from notifications to the RCMP, DTI, ambulance, NB, and the Fire Rescue Department to ensure continuity of emergency services. May I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Second? Councillor Balfour? Councillor Balfour, I bet you can speak to this motion.
Your Worship, Mr. Corey, resident of our town, our fine town, advised me that this year the Remembrance Day services, as a product which they've been submitted to CAO, will have to again be outside and not at the River Valley Middle School as it had been many years before. And I was at the one last year. The weather did cooperate, which was great for November 11th. But the number of people who could actually attend was limited to, I think, around 50. And there were veterans and replayers and soldiers, so the general residents of the town could not attend. It was live streamed from the cell phone, hoping that we could work with the town. Mr. Ryan's going to be approaching you to see if we could, if the town could help a little bit more with the live streaming. Perhaps on our YouTube channel, such that all the residents can see. But the request specifically here is that by this road closure, many more people would be able to observe the ceremonies in person.
Thank you, Councillor Balfour. Are there any questions or comments on the motion?
No, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think so too. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Yeah, I watched that online last year, the next one this year.
And it's going to be great because our banners are going back up shortly. Yeah.
Item 12, bills for payment. Motion that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the September 27, 2021 bills for payment as presented in the amount for $276,610.41. Any motion? Thank you, Councillor Day. Second. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Any questions or comments on the motion?
One question, Your Worship. Item number 7, audio sign films Inc. for tourism, $1,210. Movies at the River Center. How many movies would that represent over the course of the summer?
I'll refer that to the CAO.
Offhand, I couldn't say 5, 6.
Not just one.
No.
No,
There's been a lot of movies.
at least 6.
Good
I
God.
think it goes back to May. And the last one was around Labor Day.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Number 17, I'm just wondering who the kits went to, or if they're just on hand for educational purposes?
So, until recently, the Chief of Public Health Regulations, the Fire Department had been planning an open house, and the primary audience for that are children. So I understand from the fire chief that his stock of stuff for children has been pretty much run out, and he needed to, one, build it up again and be prepared for the open house. Unfortunately, children cannot be vaccinated. They are a high-risk group now, and we're postponing that. Hopefully that can happen in the spring, so that's what those kits are for.
Okay, thank you. The other one, number 68, $1,570.84. Is that one picnic table? And where is that?
Yeah, so, the town purchases picnic tables of a certain quality to ensure that they're not easily vandalized, they're not broken. So these are a combination of plastic and metal, I believe, and the recreation director has got a program where he wants to replace all the old heavy wooden ones for 2 reasons. One, aesthetic, they can be used year round. The wooden ones had to be moved and then returned every year. So now, it's a nice sunny day in December and the wind's down, the sun is out, You can actually have an outdoor picnic if you want, or sit there or do whatever. So that's what that is. Same thing with other outdoor stuff. You look at a garbage can for, up to $500. Again, it's designed to be difficult to be vandalized, damaged, and stuff like that. So that's why there's an extra cost for some of this municipal equipment.
Thank you.
Councillor Day?
51, it's about a door at the splash pad. Did that get vandalized?
So what happens is someone's in distress in the bathroom, they get it on,
Yes.
and then that will send out a signal on the front of the light, that light is vandalized and needs to be replaced.
Do we have any other questions on the bills for payment? Okay. Thank you all for all the time that you take to go through this list. We have the fiduciary duty that we do, and it's, I really appreciate it when you take the time to look at each one of these expenditures, because there's a lot of them. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Item 13, consent agenda. 13A, letter decoding dyslexia and B. 13B, letter Diabetes Canada. 13C, Veterans Peace Card Concept Drawings. 13D, Brothers Point Thursday Night Market Proposal. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the consent agenda documents for September 27, 2021.
So
Thank you, Councillor Day. Second. Deputy Mayor Toole, thank you. Any questions on the motion?
I'd like to compliment Corey and his team for I like the concept drawings for the Veterans Peace Park. It's well overdue, and it gives recognition to the men and women from this community who have served to make life better for us. So thank you very much. It's looks really sharp. Sorry, I can't think of a word.
Yes, John?
Well, I just wanted the council know that the team from the Legion is working on this. Corey and Councillor Malcolm have also been working with Indigenous representation to show that there is connection there. I don't know the better word to how to describe that, Councillor Malcolm, but
And I believe that the concept drawings are on the town website, and that we're asking for the public for input.
That was nice. I found that on Facebook, and I went, oh, all right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't live on there, but it's just something to look at every now and then.
Your worship, until the end of business day, October 1st.
Okay, so there's still some time. So you're still looking for the input from the community, so please go on the website and take a look. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Item 14, everyone's favorite time of the evening, council reports. We will start with Councillor Bailens tonight.
None tonight.
Okay, that's good, then we'll move on to Councillor Bell.
Two committees that I sit on, and two very quick updates. The Population Growth Committee, I'm pleased that our consultant for our town's economic development plan, EDP, has started. I understand there are going to be some interviews with some local stakeholders and other key people in the town by the consultant. And I'm looking forward to my opportunity to sit with them remotely as well. And secondly, on October the 27th, I will be attending as a representative for council in the town on the pension board meeting, which will be held in Frederick. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm. Councillor Day.
I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, so no, I'm not going to give you 14 hours of comments, but I will start off with one of the items that I was going to mention. That Sunday prior to our meeting, we had a small group in the parking lot at the Sobeys with signs that read, "I am Muslim. If you have any questions, I will answer them." And there was 4 or 5 young gentlemen, and of course, when we came around, and I said to my husband, "You're gonna stop." And I had a chance to chit chat, and they were from Ontario, and what they were trying to do is take the fear out of the Islamophobia that people have. And they had traveled across Canada with a, my brain's just going, imam. They're equivalent to our ministers or priests. And it was interesting to find out that one of these young men was in business at university, and another one was studying, I'm trying to remember now because it's been a little while. One worked in construction. Oh, I know what the other one did. He worked in technology. And this was part of their prayer, place of worship's way of reaching out to the communities across Canada. And I thought it was very brave of them. And I thought they were really, really great for doing that. So I wanted to mention to the community because at the time, I was hoping by my stopping that I would encourage somebody else to stop. And I know that it's, the fear of unknown will really sometimes cause our prejudices and our perceptions to creep up. And instead of taking people for being people, we have all these perceptions that aren't even necessarily truth. So if you do have a friend that is Muslim, talk to them. It's a way of sharing their belief systems, and sometimes you find there's more positives in how you can connect than what there is negatives to keep us separated. The second thing is we are still looking for a couple more people to join the book club for the 55 plus. If there's somebody that's 25 and they like to read books and they've got Wednesday morning open at 10 o'clock, let us know because we can be intergenerational. But the name of the book club has changed. I really didn't like it as Bev's book club because it wasn't Bev's, it was River Valley's. So we are now called River Valley Page Turners. And I think that's very appropriate. Our book that we're reading right now is written by our own Martha Bowles, who is part of EMO, and it's called Senior Management. So as I read that, I have learned a few more tricks that I'm going to pull when I get to the nursing home. So anyways, the third thing is I've been reading a lot with the pillars of which I've been associated with, especially climate change. I have found some of that is interesting of what the impact is going to be, and I'm really concerned because it's not going to impact on me or my generation, it's the younger people that it's going to impact on more than anything. And so I'm scheduled to be taking some online courses and some updates from UNMD and FCM on climate change. And if there's a young person out there that would really like to get involved, you can find me on Facebook or private message me. Because I've got one young gentleman who presented to us before the election last year, and I'd like to have a couple more young people involved with that. So if there's someone out there that's studying climate change at school and they're really into it, and they want, or even university, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor McIntosh Lauren?
So for the past couple weeks, I've been reading multiple papers like Councillor Day from different municipalities on active transportation plans and rural communities for climate adaptation plans. as well as continuing with the Indigenous Canada course. I had my first meeting with the RCC board on September 1st. That meeting consisted of the director's reports. We talked a lot about the empty space in the RCC, and that's still, we're still talking about that. There still hasn't been a final decision on what will happen with that space. And the next month we will be doing the RCC budget. Also, I've been working on a fall scene at Community Park. So families can go and have a photo opportunity. So that will hopefully be sometime during the week before Thanksgiving. So if you're about, stop in and take some family photos in the Community Park. And the last thing, the recreation committee at RCC and the town are partnering to do a Halloween event. So that's we have ideas, but that's sort of a surprise. So we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Stephanie. Deputy Mayor Toole.
Like the other councils have mentioned, I was highlighting the last 2 weeks was meeting together with the CAO, deputy CAO, and co-chairs or W chairs of our committees that are all involved with in relation to our strategic pillars. And mine is organizational capacity. So it was great to kind of get together, really put down on paper what we're looking for. So really excited about this one. Also excited to have our new CFO starting so that we can work together to advance some of the organizational capacity items. And one of them on there is communication, which we've all identified as a key piece kind of all of our pillars. And one of the main goals of our union council is to be able to communicate with the town. So we're working on that right now. So anybody who has any ideas, please reach out. And things you want to see, don't want to see, worked, haven't worked, please let us know, because that is key in our use. So another couple of interesting items. I participated, I believe, with the CAO and the mayor as well in the Justice and Public Safety brief for elected officials that they had, where we learned a bit more about email systems and stuff around our region. And I've been able to, like some of the other councils have mentioned, finally had time to settle in to read a few things that have been provided to us by the UMNB and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We've been getting lots of emails, magazines, websites or webinars and introductions that we haven't had a lot of time to do it. So now we've been able to kind of fold through, realize what we should be focusing on and look at that. And as I mentioned earlier, we had the Regional Facilities Commission contribution budget passed. That was overdone the last couple of weeks. And also the reconciliation training, we've been working on that. I've had the benefits, my office is also been supporting reconciliation training. I actually have 2 courses that I've been able to take on through here at my office. So highly recommend anyone if you're working with the town hall to take a look at these and take a look at them. So.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. So your council's been working quite hard. Thank you very much for all the work that you're doing on our behalf. I want to take this moment to officially welcome our new CFO, Greg Yeomans. Greg, we're very pleased to have you here. We're looking forward to, especially going into budget, to have you here and support our CAO and support us, as a relatively mostly new council in that process. So welcome. We hope you'll be very happy here with us.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to be here, and after a few weeks of budget conversations and my thoughts, I hope you're still as keen as the other day. Thank you very much.
I think we're spending a lot of quality time together in the next little while. And so one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is, taking meetings, reading papers, being on calls and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to highlight that one of the calls that I was on was the recent call prior to the announcement of our province going back into yellow and readopting the emergency order. And I just want to take this moment to encourage everyone, if you haven't already gotten vaccinated, please get vaccinated, get double vaccinated. It's the way for us to eventually get back to normal. Our case counts are going up. The percentage of cases that are the Delta variant are going up. So let's all work together and try and beat this thing so that, you know, we can get closer together again and do things together again, so.
Your worship, they've also posted requirements for the third booster shot for those that have, fragile health issues.
Okay.
So, if you're, I know St. Stephen is much quicker to get into than, the park, on the east side. But it's there.
Thank you, Councilor Day. Thank you. Okay, so I guess that concludes most of our business for the evening. So we're on to item 16, adjournment, and the motion before you is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adjourn the meeting at 8:45 p.m. That's a record. I think that's the earliest one. We have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Day.